Hi, Crimies. I'm your host, MAB, and you're listening to Coffee and Crime, the podcast. This week was a little crazy, and I know I promised you all the drop of episode number 1. I did go as far as recording last night, and then when the editing was happening, I was mortified, and there was no way that I was releasing the episode as it was. As I mentioned previously, this episode was not planned at all. I released it fairly quickly, put it together pretty quickly. So it's still an ongoing investigation, which means there's very limited information available. If you're familiar with the true crime world, often when an investigation is ongoing, the police and other involved parties tend to keep things pretty tight-lipped until they have firm information to give us, I guess. So as you can see, I don't have a background. I didn't even blur my background. So please know that I will do better for the next episode. But I wanted to release this one. So here we are. All the information I used to produce this podcast is available online. And all the pertinent information, if I looked at specific articles from either CBC, CTV, whatever the case may be, I will be sure to list all pertinent information, and credits will also be listed in the show notes. I want to take a second to shout out to Lee for creating my logo. It was super appreciated, and it will be with me for a long time to come. Quick disclaimer, listener and or viewer discretion is advised. Let's jump into the case. So welcome finally to episode 1 of my Coffee and Crime podcast. This is the story of Blake Mackenzie Nicholson. So Blake was born on August 12th of 1996 in Amherst, Nova Scotia, which means he was 28 years old at the time of his passing. Quick little background information about Amherst, Nova Scotia. During the 19th century, Amherst became an important regional center for shipbuilding and other services to outlying communities. So they were sort of like the middle ground. Entrepreneurs constructed many fine Victorian and Edwardian homes along Victoria Street East. And even today, if you drive down Victoria Street, they're all historical homes. They are gorgeous. A lot of them are humongous, definitely out of my budget. And I think it's complicated when you own a historic home. This is a whole other topic, but I believe you have to, if you want to do renovations, like replace windows or anything of the sort, if there's, what do you call it, stained glass, I think you have to replace it with like material. Anyway, it gets complicated, but you can definitely look that up. It also became very popular when stories were shared of alleged poltergeist phenomena afflicting one Amherst resident, Esther Cox, in the 1878 and 1879s. This became known as the Great Amherst Mystery. I saw something about that a couple years ago. They were having a whole event surrounding that. I'm not going down that rabbit hole today, but there's plenty of information online, and it's available if you want to go look for it. So today, Amherst is the largest town in Cumberland County, and it's also known for its heritage, and it holds a population of approximately 9,800 residents. Spring Hill is a community that was founded as Spring Hill Mines because the coal mining led to economic growth with its incorporation as a town in 1889. It's been a couple years. And I did not know this. I found this very interesting when I was doing my research. As of 2015, the mine properties among the deepest in the world, the number 2 mine reaches 14,300 feet and it's filled with water. So I guess it's so hot in there that it's sort of like boiling water, which also can be used to conduct heat. So they provide Spring Hills Industrial Park with geothermal heating. I honestly did not know this. Really thought it was interesting. Spring Hill's also the home to the Anne Marie Center. Anne Marie's a singer. She's quite popular. And this is a place where her fans can visit and step into her life as a singer and as a person as well. Based on the 2021 census, Spring Hill had 2,654 residents. Don't know if that includes the penitentiary or not. So, to get back to Blake, he was raised and graduated high school in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia, alongside Maddie, and she's his partner of 14 years who's now left to live her life without him and to raise their son, Daxton. She was truly the love of his life, and they were high school sweethearts. I can't even imagine, or can't even begin to imagine what she feels and what she's going through. One minute you have a spouse and you're a happy family with your spouse and your baby. And the next day, in a split second, everything changes and you're left by yourself with your child. Can't imagine. It's just heartbreaking. Blake also obviously left behind many family and friends who meant a lot to him. His obituary describes Blake as taking an interest in plumbing, and he also graduated top of his class in his course. So obviously he was a smart individual. Blake and Maddie had their son Daxton in 2022, and I can just so picture this next little segment. It pulls heartstrings, and I can just see it in my mind. So it goes on to say that Daxton, his son, loved curling up with his dad for a snuggle on the couch to watch their favorite YouTuber, Cletus McFarlane. It just warmed my heart. His obituary goes on to say that Blake loved the woods and that he was an avid fisherman and hunter. He loved four-wheeling and camp hopping with the boys. And I think this is a common thing. Like, I grew up in a city, so I'm not familiar with growing up in a more of a country setting, I guess. But I can picture the four-wheeling, the camp hopping. I'm guessing it's all things people up here did when they were growing up. I moved here already old. He loved spending time in Five Islands. I've also been there fishing, and it's a gorgeous spot, so I don't know how anybody would not like that. He enjoyed singing around the campfire with the ones closest to him. So this also is another core memory. You can picture whether it's Blake and his family or anybody. I'm sure everybody at one point in their life sat around a bonfire with friends or family. Somebody whips out the guitar, singing comes out. It's just, those are core memories that you do not forget. He was also very proud of his first truck, which was a Toyota Tacoma, and he referred to his truck as the Yoda. So with all of these great adventures and experiences, evidently the one he enjoyed the most was the birth of his son, and he enjoyed and was happy to be able to share that with Maddie and experience it together. He was said to be able to fix almost anything, and even though he never wanted to be or never aspired to be a mechanic, he was still always willing to help fix many people's cars, their trucks, their sleds. He was just always ready to help anyone in need. And even though he had a very burly exterior, and you can see that from the pictures, he's just burly. There's no other way to describe it. He had a very soft heart, and he was very kind and loyal. So let's start at the beginning of this story, which takes us back to February 21st, 2025. I know his obituary says that he passed on February 22nd. And I think the reason is that the whole incident happened, I guess, late on the 21st, leading into the 22nd. However, he did pass on the 22nd as a result of his injuries. So, according to an RCMP statement from Monday, February 24th, Blake was riding his snowmobile on Wyvern Road near Poison Lake that Friday night, and around 10:20 p.m. he suddenly left the roadway when he hit a snowbank. Mounties said that he was struck by a fire truck while being attended to in the roadway. They didn't specify, or I wasn't able to find an article that specified whether it was the first incident or the second incident that ended his life. I don't want to speculate, so I'm not going to give my opinion, but anyway, I couldn't find any for sure articles that determined which incident ended his life. However, this brings me to introduce someone else to this sad story, and his name is Gerald Cotton. I don't have a lot of information on Gerald so far, other than the fact that he was a fire chief with the Collingwood District Volunteer Fire Department at the time. And he was the one who showed up at the scene of the accident when Blake went off the road. Now, Gerald's story changed a few times, which didn't really make his statement credible, to say the least. So, first, Gerald told Alan Cole. Alan Cole is the municipal director of protective services, that he may have clipped the snowmobile. Then later that day, when his wife Andrea was contacted, she provided the same story. I mean, okay. Anyway, they provided the same story. Later that day, Alan Cole met them both in person and they were questioned again. And during this in person meeting, they both confirmed that they did not strike the victim. So, okay, okay. You know, something happened, but we don't know what happened. And we definitely did not hit Blake. So during this meeting, Gerald made the decision, just randomly, to step aside from his duties as a fire chief, and Andrea Bishop, his wife, was named deputy chief or acting chief. So after all these lies and this fiasco of a story, the RCMP announced that Monday that Blake had in fact been struck by the vehicle. So I'm not sure how they determined that the fire truck had indeed hit Blake. I know that as part of the investigation, they confiscated the snowmobile and the fire truck. So I'm not sure what evidence they were able to find to back up the fact that the fire truck hit Blake. But I'm going to trust that, they know what they're saying and what they're talking about. So one member of the fire department shared that their opinion, and I want to make that clear, this is their opinion, is that it was possible that the truck slid into the victim on the way by. Then an RCMP officer told Post Media's Chronicle Herald that the road was dark and snow covered at the time. And they also confirmed, well, I guess they didn't confirm, they don't suspect that drugs or alcohol were a factor on the night of the incident. So, I have some questions. First of all, if Gerald and Andrea really wanted the RCMP, the public, whoever, to believe that it was an accident and, maybe they slipped or whatever the reasons were that were people's opinions that were given, that the road was slippery or that it was dark, whatever the case may be. If it really was an accident or it wasn't intentional or, they slipped, would that not have been the first story that you would have given? If I go to my best friend's house and I bump her vase and it drops and it shatters into 1,000 pieces, and she asks me what happened, I'm not going to be like, well, I don't know. I didn't touch your vase. I have no idea what happened. No, I'm going to tell her it was an accident. I bumped it. It broke into 1,000,000 pieces. However, if I took the vase and threw it, I'd be pretty embarrassed to admit that. So I don't know. Take it for what it is, I guess. Also, in a CTV article that I read, it said that the corporal stated that while they can confirm that Gerald Cotton was driving the fire truck at the time of the incident, again, they state that the investigators at the scene did not have suspicion that impairment was a factor. So they don't believe that alcohol or drugs were a factor. However, a wise man once told me, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So I guess I don't really understand why, if based on his previous behavior from 2020, which we'll talk about soon, I can't help but wonder why a breathalyzer wasn't administered at the scene or shortly after, even if it was after when they went back to the police station or whatever the case may be. I mean, it's not every day that a fire truck hits a human. So that must have been questionable, right? Questionable behavior, a questionable scene, a questionable accident. I don't know. I guess I would just want to make sure I cover all my bases. But breathalyzer did not happen. So they can suspect that impairment wasn't a factor. However, they cannot confirm. So I don't want to spend a lot more time discussing opinions and all of the all of the things that I saw online, because if it's an opinion and it's not a fact, then to me it becomes speculation. I like sticking to facts. We know for sure it happened. This is what we know so far. I guess to pause here for a second, my second question is, again, if it was truly an accident, why did they deny anything? Gerald and Andrea denied that anything at all happened multiple times, because they weren't just questioned once, they weren't just questioned twice, they were questioned multiple times. And every single time they said they did not strike the victim. It just all seems odd to me. So even though this already sounds confusing and sketchy, to say the least, I have a few more bits of information to share with you about Gerald Cotton. So first, let's backtrack for a second. Once hard evidence came out about the vehicle striking Blake, so the fire truck hitting Blake, the municipality of Cumberland voted to not only discharge Chief Gerald Cotton and Deputy Chief Andrea Bishop, again his wife, but they were also banned for life from the fire station, and they were advised that all the locks would be changed. So, like, they're not messing around. They don't want you there, even if you go there, which you're not supposed to be there. They don't want you inside. They're doing everything they can in their power to make sure that Andrea and Gerald stay away from the fire department. So at this point, before they were forced to, I guess, resign from their positions or whatever you want to call it, you might have been thinking, okay, that's commendable that he voluntarily stepped down. It's kind of cool. But here's the thing. The Monday following the death of Blake, and after Gerald voluntarily, remember, he voluntarily initially stepped down from his duties as a fire chief, he responded to a call by driving Andrea, his wife, to the scene. Now, once they arrive, the family of the woman who called ended up turning away assistance once they saw that it was Gerald. So, I mean, to me, that says a lot. You don't typically call for emergency services unless you truly need them. So for them to show up, and then once they show up, the family of the victim turn the help away, like, I would rather suffer longer than to have you help me. They really clearly did not want him there. To top this off, back in 2020, Gerald had pleaded guilty to impaired driving while driving the fire truck. So according to Nova Scotia's Public Prosecution Service, Gerald got a fine of $2,000. He got his license suspended from November 30th, 2020 to May 31st, 2022. And he also got an 18-month prohibition on motor vehicles. To top this off, Gerald was banned from driving municipal vehicles for about a year, so he wasn't able to drive a fire truck, as an example. Wonder why, right? So apparently the municipality did not have the authority to remove chiefs or deputy chiefs prior to the enactment of the bylaw the municipality used most recently. So at the time, the only option they would have had would have been to disband the department. It's a pretty big and pretty serious decision to make, I guess. But again, side note, and if anyone here knows the ins and outs of things like this, please weigh in. But why wouldn't they have fought back in 2020 to use the same bylaw they used a few weeks ago? I mean, This man pleaded guilty. It's not like he was just randomly found guilty. He pleaded guilty. So it's an admission of guilt. And he admitted to also be driving the fire truck while he was impaired or under the influence of alcohol. So let that sink in for a second. So then what? We just simply trust that this good Samaritan of a man is simply just not going to do it again? I know we're Canadian, but come on, seriously. So, as per an article from the CBC, they reached out to Cotton and Bishop for comments, but they've not replied. If I was in their position, I probably wouldn't either. And I'm assuming if they lawyered up, that their lawyer probably advised them not to, which is smart. So Blake's family and friends keep protesting in front of the RCMP building in Amherst, stating that they want answers. So I'm just going to play a clip for you from the CBC News.
Family members protested outside an RCMP detachment in Amherst Sunday, one day after the funeral for a loved one.
I'm looking for justice for my fiance, my son, and his entire family. But that is all I have to say.
Around 20 people gathered as an organized protest for Blake Nicholson. The family says Nicholson was the man killed in Collingwood Corner, Nova Scotia on February 21st after he was struck by a fire truck.
I'm here for my family, their family, and for any other family. So this maybe not happen again to someone else.
Emergency crews were responding to the scene of a snowmobile crash in Poison Lake. Police say a fire truck from the Collingwood and District Volunteer Fire Department struck a 28-year-old Spring Hill man who had crashed a snowmobile and was waiting for medical assistance. The man later died at the scene.
We just want some answers, just want someone to be held accountable for all this. What happened to my brother? It's not okay and it's not right. No one should have to go through this, and I don't want anybody to go through this. So we need answers.
Fire Chief Gerald Cotton and Acting Fire Chief Andrea Bishop have been dismissed from the department. The municipality of Cumberland has confirmed Cotton was driving the fire truck at the time of the crash. The RCMP told CTV News last week they do not believe the driver of the truck was impaired at the time of the incident.
Yeah, we just want some answers. We just need, no one's telling anybody anything.
The Nova Scotia RCMP is asking the public for help in the ongoing investigation. Derek Haggett, CTV News, Amherst.
So back to the obituary for a second. It states that an account has been opened at CIBC at 41 Main Street in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia, to establish a trust for Daxton, Blake and Madison's son. Donations can be made at any CIBC branch. Please reference "In Memory of Blake Nicholson," transfer number 1935410. So again, it's "In Memory of Blake Nicholson," transfer number 1935410. Or you can e-transfer at nicholson.trust25@gmail.com. And I'll pop all this information in the show notes for you. So if you want to donate, you can definitely easily do so. And I'm sure the family would appreciate. So this concludes the episode for now, and I will definitely keep an eye out for any updates as the case progresses. Usually they'll either do news releases or it'll just randomly come out. So once I grab the updates, I will definitely jump on the mic and give you guys the updates. In the meantime, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Do you think that if things had been handled more seriously or taken more seriously or handled differently back in 2020, that Blake's death could have been prevented? And do you think that if it truly was an accident, I mean, now it's been determined that they were driving the fire truck, but do you think that initially when we didn't know what happened, if it really was an accident, do you really think that Gerald and Andrea would have taken the time to lie about what happened? I'm just curious to see how you guys see it and see what your thoughts are. So again, thank you for listening to Blake's story. I really appreciate that you chose to spend your time with me this evening. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like, share, do all of the things. This helps grow the channel. It's free. And that way I can help provide you more true crime on a regular basis. I hope you'll tune in to Coffee and Crime for the next episode that I release. And until then, remember, even though it's cliche and just a little bit corny, crime is a waste of time. Bye.